Discover the legendary life of Makoma, warrior, statesman, and political titan.
Lungiselela ukubona ubomi bukaMakoma. Indoda ekhaliphileyo. Unyana kaNgqika. Umkhuseli wesizwe. Indoda eyayimele isizwe sayo. Kukho okuninzi ekufuneka kuthethwe. Kwaye kukho okuninzi ekufuneka kuxelwe.
Akamasizwe esikhulu sanuboyikanto. Akamasizwe esikhulu jongaphambili. Akamasizwe esikhulu musa.
What do you mean? Our army has been defeated. Find this man called Makoma and bring him to me.
Discover the full story of the man whose mastery of the land defined defiance, and whose legacy became a powerful symbol of resilience. Born around 1798, the right-hand son of Nkwika of the Amahahabe, Makoma's destiny was complicated before it began. Though the eldest, his mother, Notonto of the Nkosini clan, was not of royal rank. That meant the great son, born of a Tembu princess, would inherit the paramount seat. The throne would belong to his brother, Sandile. Yet Makoma was destined for something greater, the command of a nation in crisis. Upon reaching manhood, he was gifted a great multicolored bull, the Jinki. His followers, inspired by its strength, became known as the Amajinki, the clan that would carry his name across history. His father gave him the praise name Jongumsobomvu, the Watcher of the Sunrise. His father saw discipline in his eyes and gave him a name that foretold his destiny. It was said that before dawn, Makoma would gather his men, gazing eastward as if waiting for the day of reckoning. Makoma, the Xhosa general who humiliated the British Empire, was a powerful flame in a long fire. At the Battle of Amalinde in 1818, Makoma, barely 20, commanded part of Nkwika's army. In a war against his uncle Ndlambe, the fighting was fierce and fratricidal, brother against brother, cousin against cousin. Ndlambe, backed by Xhosa and the Great House, crushed Nkwika's forces. The defeat was total. Makoma never forgot that day, the day he saw his people destroy themselves while their real foe, the British, watched from across the frontier. "I saw the valley run red," he would later say, "not with victory, but with the blood of brothers. From that day, I swore that the nation would never again destroy itself, so the foreigner may inherit our ashes." That vow would define his life. When Nkwika died in 1829, his son Sandile was still a child. Makoma stepped in as regent, not only a warrior but a statesman. He ruled wisely, balancing the rival chiefs of the Hahabe and managing relations with the British. His diplomacy, it is said, was exceptional, and he brought a common unity among the various conflicting clans. He also acted as counselor to the paramount King Xhosa, even in matters beyond the usual topic of war and conflict. He would weigh in with wise counsel. It is said, for instance, that when Xhosa exiled his great wife Nomsa, Makoma asked him, "How will your son become a man if his mother is cast away?" His words persuaded Xhosa to restore her, ensuring the initiation of their son, Sahili, the future paramount king of the nation. Even in peace, Makoma shaped the continuity of a kingdom. But peace did not last. The British Empire had begun its slow crawl eastward from the Cape. They wanted the fertile valleys of the frontier. By 1829, Makoma's lands along the Cat River had been seized. He watched as British patrols trampled the grazing fields where his cattle once stood. "If they take the earth," he said, "they take the heart, and I will not live without a heartbeat." Then came 3 storms, 3 wars that would shape both Makoma and the fate of a nation. The first was the Sixth Frontier War of 1834 to 1835, known as Xhosa's War. Makoma fought beside his uncle, King Xhosa, leading warriors in a campaign of raids that reached the outskirts of Grahamstown. For the first time, the British felt what it meant to be vulnerable on the frontier. When Xhosa was captured and killed, Makoma's grief hardened into resolve. The paramount was dead, but the fire of resistance had only begun. The second storm came in 1846 to 1847, during the Seventh Frontier War. Now an experienced commander, Makoma used mobility as his greatest weapon. He drew British columns deep into the Amatole Mountains, where terrain and mist became his allies. He struck at night, vanished into the bush, and reappeared miles away, leaving soldiers disoriented and afraid. For every village burned, another rose in the forest. He used the empire's discipline against itself, slow, heavy, predictable, while his own warriors moved with the wind. The third and greatest storm came in 1850 to 1853, the Eighth Frontier War, remembered as Melangenie's War. Although many years had passed since his early days of service to the nation, it is in this war that Makoma achieved legend. From his base in the dense ravines of the Water Kloof, known as Matonsi, he orchestrated a campaign of astonishing skill. He turned the very land into a living army. Valleys became ambushes, forests became fortresses, mist became his ally, gunsmoke hung low among dripping leaves, hoofbeats vanished into the roar of cicadas, warriors' feet pressed the wet earth, their breaths hidden in the rain. When silence fell, the forest answered with spears. For Makoma's enemies, the British settlers, it was as if they were fighting ghosts, unseen, everywhere, invincible. Makoma would send decoys to lure British patrols into ravines, and he would use cow horns to echo war cries from unseen ridges. To the British, the Water Kloof became a haunted land, a map that lied, a forest that fought back. Governor Sir Harry Smith, who had sworn to crush the Xhosa, was defeated and recalled in disgrace. Colonel John Fordyce, commanding a British regiment, was killed in an ambush so swift that even the superior cannon artillery could not answer. So great was the victory against Colonel Fordyce, the highest-ranking British officer to be killed in the Water Kloof battles, so much so that the people would call Makoma the Leopard of Fordyce, the hunter who struck without warning and vanished like wind. For 3 relentless years, Makoma bled the British Empire. Thousands of British troops were sent into the field. More than 1,000 never returned. London called it a disgrace. The Cape called it a nightmare. Even Makoma's enemies admitted his brilliance. Governor of the Cape Colony, Major General Sir George Cathcart, wrote bitterly, "Makoma cannot be beaten by arms, only by destroying the land that shelters him." And so they did. The British burned villages, fields, and grain stores. Cattle were driven off, and thousands of people fled into the mountains. When the fires finally died and hunger silenced the spears, Makoma walked out of the mountains unarmed. "I surrender," he said, "not because I am beaten, but because my people have nothing left to eat." He was never captured in battle, only starved into surrender. When the British paraded him in his own villages in chains, the people did not bow. They ululated in defiance. Even in defeat, Makoma commanded more loyalty than the empire that claimed to rule him. But the land he had defended was dying. Famine followed war. The prevailing colonial narrative attributed the famine directly to a prophecy by the young girl Nongqawuse, who allegedly proclaimed that the ancestors would return if the people slaughtered their cattle and purified themselves of sin. This narrative suggests that the people followed the prophecy, but the promised day passed, and the drums of prophecy fell silent. Across the plains, smoke rose where herds once grazed. Mothers dug at dry earth for roots. Colonial officers, meanwhile, accused the prominent chief Makoma of deliberately orchestrating the prophecy to lure his people to self-destruction. The truth is far more complex. It seems unlikely that an entire nation would willingly work against its self-interest, subjecting itself to imminent death by starvation. Instead, oral traditions point out that the region was already grappling with severe drought and a lung disease that was devastating the herds, suggesting that many were forced to slaughter their already ailing cattle as a desperate measure, not simply as an act of faith. By 1857, thousands were dead of starvation. The British Cape Colony seized the opportunity to annex the lands that remained. The empire had finally succeeded where decades of frontier wars had failed, through the devastating strategic leverage of famine. Makoma's struggle did not end there. He remained a symbol of resistance, a man the British could neither forget nor forgive. Twice he was imprisoned for defying colonial orders. In 1859, he was exiled to Robben Island, the same prison that would, a century later, hold Nelson Mandela. He spent 10 long years there before being released, frail but unbroken. When he returned to the mainland, he found his ancestral lands taken by white settlers. When he returned to his old kraal to reoccupy it, he was arrested again for trespassing on his own homeland. He was sent back to Robben Island in 1871 and died there in 1873 at the age of 75. The official record listed his death as natural causes, but oral tradition insists he was murdered, shot by a guard. When his remains were returned to the Eastern Cape decades later, a pierced shoulder blade seemed to confirm the truth. The same sea that carried Makoma into exile would, a century later, carry hope back to shore. They thought they buried him in silence. But the name Makoma never died. His story became the living thread that tied together the divided houses of Polo and the wounded nation of Xhosa. Makoma's praise names still echo today. He is the black snake that crosses rivers unseen. He is the leopard of Fordyce, whose claws are hidden in mist. His death was meant to erase him. Instead, it made his memory immortal. Empires rise, empires fall, but the land remembers. And so does history. That is the chain of resistance, unbroken, unstoppable, until the rising sun of a free nation finally broke the long night of exile.
Yeah, 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 yeah. Phakamazizwe esikhulu musanukoyikanto Phakamazizwe esikhulu jonga phambili Phakamazizwe esikhulu musanukoyikanto Phakamazizwe esikhulu jonga phambili Sihamba sonke njengomoya asiyeki siyakhula sivuke sikhula shala